Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Hello, how are ya? Glad to see you guys here with me tonight. It's just another Saturday night, and I ain't got nobody. I got some reading on my Kindle. How I wish I had someone to talk to. Hey, look at all of y'all. Okay, well, take that for what it's worth. Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. Tonight, we start a new book. As happens every couple of weeks around here, we read Tuesdays and Saturdays, and, well, when you do that, you run out of book. So what do? You start a new book, and you read it until you run out of book, and then you start a new book, and then you over and over and over. You guys know how it is. You all know. You understand, because you are here with me. And we are getting ready to start a Bigfoot Found by Tim D. Smith. No relation to Tim Maloney. I don't know why there would be, just because we have the same first name. Has nothing to do with it. But who doesn't like a good book about a cryptid, about a gigantic, mythical animal? Man, human, beast, whatever you want to call it. Bigfoot has been in the lore for many years, and now Bigfoot will come to you. If you happen to be somebody who was here and was with the last readings, Spectral Braver, all of those videos are now available on the YouTube channel for your viewing and listening pleasure, which allows us to start our new series. With this series on your screen, you will see a QR code. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Tim D. Smith is in the future, and he brings you a QR code. That QR code will take you right to his website, where you can find out more about him, as well as where you too can pick up the book. You know, there is something to be said about me reading the book to you. There's also something to said about me reading the book to you and you being able to follow along in the book. There's no reason you can't go out there, buy the ebook, read right along with me, and find out what it's all about. But even if not, you are here with me. As a reminder, I do record all of the chapters as we are reading this, which means I am unable to stop in the middle of a chapter to answer any questions that you may have. Whatever platform you happen to be on, we are currently on, let's see, there's TikTok, we're on Twitch, YouTube, Kick, X, Rumble. I would be on others, but I think that's about as many as we need to be on. That is enough. But I will be looking out for any comments that you may have, and I will be happy to respond to them in between chapters. But during the chapter itself, we'll just continue to read on through, and I will answer them at the end. And now, wherever you happen to be, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we start Bigfoot Found by Tim D. Smith, read to you by Tim Maloney. Starting with Chapter 1, 911 Where is your emergency? There's a Bigfoot looking in my window. Ma'am, are you at 110 County Road 12? The dispatcher could hear someone talking and then laughing from the appendage of a room adjoining the E911 center, a coincidence unrelated to the present call. Otherwise, silence bathed the room, the screaming, tragic existence from the outside world muted and muffled by protocol, lead-lined ceilings, and sound-absorbent wallpaper. He's walking off across the pasture, the panicked caller said in a hushed, anxious whisper. Teresa hesitated before responding, which indicated the 911 operator sensed no emergency existed. When she finally spoke again, her words were even slower and more clipped than usual, and that in itself was remarkable. Is 110 County Road 12 your address? I think it is. Lordy, I'm shaking. I'll have an officer come out and talk with you, okay? Do you want to speak to an officer? Mrs. Bennet? The line was silent. Ma'am? I hear footsteps on the porch, Mrs. Bennet whispered. The dispatcher pushed the transmit button on the radio, but still held the phone to her ear. No acceleration of pulse, but the instincts, sharpened by thousands of call, hinted at some dark undertone and finally concerned her. Control 1, 431. Someday maybe she would have one of those nice headsets people always see when they watch television shows depicting operators taking emergency calls. But for now, Teresa would have to cradle the phone between her ear and shoulder. 1043 possible, 1049 at 110 County Road 12. Teresa thought about the sergeant taking the call and reconsidered her dispatch. Investigate a possible prowler at the residence. I'll get directions to the house while you're en route. Switch to private. Teresa keyed a different channel and covered the mouthpiece of the phone. Caller says she saw a Bigfoot looking in the window, and now she says she hears footsteps. Someone's knocking around my door, Mrs. Bennet said in a whisper once more. Stay on the phone with me, okay? The line was quiet. Ma'am? The red line on the 911 screen shrank and vanished. Dead. Martin Johnson could hear the roar of the falls as he walked across the pine wood bridge at the top of the trail. Water crashed in a spray of white foam as fine white mist floated in the still air like sheer voile, the shroud of water droplets enfolding him on this warm, early summer evening. Off the end of the bridge, the trail splayed into a wider area where cement picnic tables once squatted in front of a small, still pool of slower water. Mrs. Jenny Johnson, a squatty woman wearing a wrinkled pink Fight Cancer t-shirt, followed out of breath behind Martin, and when they arrived at their destination, their 12-year-old son, Jace, already sat squatting at the edge of the water poking a small stick around in the muck. The boy's knees cradled his face, his gaze intent on the bottom of the clear pool. The man's 10-year-old daughter, Lacey, spun in sweeping, lazy circles behind the boy and looked high into the trees as she sang to herself, blonde hair spinning out behind her like a carnival ride. The girl's hands, attempting centrifugal and effervescent escape, swept radar-like at the end of twiggish arms in what might have looked artistic to someone inclined to see things that way. Can we sit? Jenny asked. She was still out of breath. That's quite a climb. How about on that rock and look out over the falls? Martin saw his wife's expression of doubt. I used to stand there with my dad every time we came up here. He omitted the part about his friend Tony jumping off the rock into the deep water between the first drop-off and the big falls. Martin and Jenny scaled the boulder that hung over the river and the falls as their children played at the edge of the calm water of the collecting pool less than 50 feet away. A warm wind rustled the leaves in the trees as the hypnotic noise of the water drowned out easy conversation. This is probably my favorite place in the world, Martin said. It's beautiful. The woman sat far back from the edge where her husband stood. My dad used to be off work on Wednesdays, and he would bring me and my friends up here. Martin thought about Tony again and wondered what he might be doing nowadays. The man turned and sat beside his wife. It's cool up here, Jenny said. Martin draped his arm around his wife, and she hugged her own arms around her middle, just below her ample bosom, inside her pink shirt, adorned by the picture of a golden bow. We should have brought a picnic. The woman nodded and looked over to her children, who were now racing around, chasing each other in the familiar way of children's evasion, full of sharp turns, twists, and darting movement. She wanted to tell them not to get too close to the water as she thought of the power of the waterfall, and in the same instant thought about them muddying their shoes. As if reading her mind, they walked toward the water, through the mud, and began studying the water where the boy had been looking before. Jace pointed at something in the clear, shallow pool. I think the kids like it here, Jenny said. She smiled to her husband. It wasn't fair to let her fear ruin his outing. Mom! The scream was loud, even over the crashing water. Martin was on his feet in a split second, going to the kids. Something in the scream spoke of danger. Both of the children looked upstream, around the bend. The water was shallow and rocky in that direction, but wide and deeper than usual due to the recent rain. Lacey was reeling away from the scene as her brother shot a backward glance toward looking for his parents, then back to the river and up the stream. Dad, look! To Martin, it looked like a large man was crossing near a bend which was shrouded in tree branches. Only this man was moving fast, stepping in the water and then onto stones. The arms of the beast in question hung out to its sides as the creature steadied itself with agility, as though going somewhere with purpose and in measured haste. By then, Martin realized it wasn't a man crossing the river. The figure was big, brown, and hairy, and it disappeared into the brush on the other side and around the gentle curve of the flowing water. What was that? Jenny asked, behind them now. She put her hands on the children's shoulders. Was it a bear? I think we just saw a Bigfoot, the man said. A long, mournful cry echoed over the noise of the crashing water. For only a moment the Martins stood without saying a word before striding in the direction of the trail and the bottom of the falls. Now the picnic area and the wading pool and the rock overlooking the falls didn't seem so safe. Not even to Martin. What do you guys think? Was it a Bigfoot? Or was it a bear? You tell me. I mean, we all know, based on the title of the book here, it was definitely a koala bear. Yep, that is exactly right. Koala bear. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Continuing on, let's go forward with Chapter 2. Hi, Candy. It's Billy again. Yes, I know, but I need to talk with Edward today. Billy held the phone between his shoulder and left ear as he peeled a banana and walked out onto his porch and into the early summer morning. The neighbor kids were playing in the road and screaming, so he retreated inside and walked through the house and out the back door onto a large curving deck that had taken an entire back-breaking summer to build. His long backyard ended in a row of pines that rolled out into a valley and became a ridge, heaved up by nature's enduring, persistent contractions. Squatchy area for sure. Perfect. He had always dreamed of walking out onto the deck and seeing a Bigfoot emerge from the trees. It sure would make things easier now, especially if he could find his camera in time. Billy. Edward, we're ready. We can go on location as soon as we have the go-ahead. I don't know, Billy. I don't know if I can even get another pitch now. Edward, I'm looking at new equipment. You know everyone loved the thermal sensors and the electronics. I've got some ideas about presentation. Billy, we don't have a chance at finding anything. People get tired of watching the program knowing you guys are going to come back empty handed. You don't know that, Eddie? We're close. Really close. Billy went inside to sit at the table. He needed all his faculties. He needed to concentrate. He needed to make this happen. You're not close, Edward said. He was a producer of the show. He made the money happen. He called the shots. It sounded as though he was moving around at his desk rearranging papers. Billy thought the man might be cleaning his desk preparing to go home to Mrs. Steinberg, but it was earlier on the West Coast. Edward didn't like to go home to his wife either, but he did like to frequent bars. That was probably where he was going, but that didn't matter. Billy needed to concentrate. We're learning more every day. We know more about their habits all the time. Billy, it's Ed you're talking to, man. You don't know that raccoons eat squatch remains and bones? You don't know what they like. You can't make things up and convince me, man. We get reports on the web every day. We are learning their habits. Let's see. Ed was quiet for a moment before he finally found what had eluded him. Well, the website has been getting hits. There are some questions about future episodes. Not many. Give us another season. Give us a shot at pitching this. Confirming the existence of Bigfoot had been Billy Mason's passion for most of his life, at least since the camping trip with his buddies when he was a junior in high school. He had seen one. He was certain of it. He had been inside the tent when the creature began throwing a barrage of rocks. He was so sure. Later, after he grew up and got married, his wife left him, in large part, due to his obsession. Every vacation he had ever taken had been to look for the mythical creature. He used his spare money to buy devices to try and capture an image or a glimpse of the beast. Finding Bigfoot was his life. Now the line was quiet. If he could have been standing in front of Edward, he was certain he could convince him. Billy would give anything to try one more season. If he had the money to pay his bills, he would do it for nothing except for the financial backing and the tools the project could provide. Ed, the ratings were good. Billy paused, almost afraid to breathe. The ratings were good, and they're getting better. You know it. We both know it. The show was trending up. I could never get more money. I didn't ask for more money. I might not be able to get the same amount of money. We don't have to talk money right now. There's no way I get more than 2 camera people and a producer. It will be a bare bones project. We want to look for Bigfoot, Billy almost said, please, but stopped in time before begging. He still held the uneaten peeled banana. Call me tomorrow. Be ready. We'll be ready. Have an itinerary and all the info we need for 4 trips. And I mean travel itineraries and everything. The works. Already do, Billy lied. Call you tomorrow. Billy had a long night ahead of him. He had work to do. So we've got Billy on his Sasquatch hunt. Which one on the cover do you think is Billy? Do you think he's the pointy one? Do you think he's the hairy one? The one that looks like Sam Elliott? Or the girl? I mean, Billy could be a girl's name. We all know it. 'Cause Billie Jean is not my love. You know. All right. I don't see any questions from the Peanut Gallery. Hello, Peanut Gallery. I'm happy to have you here with us. I don't see anything, so let us continue, shall we? And move along and find ourselves a Bigfoot. Oh, Bigfoot, where art thou, Bigfoot? All right, here we go with Chapter 3. Pixie followed on her master's heels through the yard in front of a rusting trailer and watched as the man unscrewed the top of a decaying bird feeder before setting the dented lid on the ground. The small gray and white shepherd mix had monitored everything Robo did for almost 7 years now, and she led a happy and pampered existence. A life of Riley. Robo took a deep breath and inhaled the landscape, resurrected at the onset of spring, painted green on the hillside by E. Cummins's perhaps hand. She would have liked the foreign silence. Robo was certain, if she had given it a chance. Robo emptied the small bag of birdseed he held under his arm into the container before securing the contraption to the limb of the dogwood once more, slightly crooked but workable. The big man could hear the rhythmic thud of a basketball bouncing on earth as two boys played in the yard beside another trailer a few hundred yards away. He watched the game for a moment and then let his gaze wander back to the uninhabited land, rolling in the distance away from his Tennessee home. Crossville was 30 miles to the northeast and Nashville more than an hour further. Robo's home was in the middle of nowhere. A squatchy area for sure. Perfect. Robo was excited. He had received 2 credible reports posted on the Bigfoot investigation team's website. What excited him, though, was that they were nearby and in Tennessee. He had never been to Tellico, even though it was only a couple of hours away. Then again, he had lived here for less than a year. Well, he didn't want to go there alone, and without his team and their equipment, he hadn't heard from anyone in almost a month. The continuation of the show was still uncertain. These reports were fresh, though, within the last 2 days, and time was of the essence if he wanted to see the Tennessee Squatch. He had seen 2 Squatches in his lifetime, and both of them had been during investigations within 2 weeks of receiving and acting upon credible sightings. The bouncing of the ball had stopped, and Robo realized why when he saw the boys running in his direction, intent in their purposeful stride, even if it was on unfinished, lanky legs and feet that hadn't grown into yet. The taller one lagging a step behind and pushing his tape-repaired glasses back into place every few steps. The 11-year-old boys were major fans of the Bigfoot team show. "What are you kids doing on my property?" Robo asked when they were close enough to hear him. Pixie looked up to Robo, then back at the boys, wondering why in the world he would say such a thing. "Robo, you don't care," Sam, the smaller one, said. "Sam, you don't know that. Is Robo your real name?" Sam asked. Dex, who had yet to speak and might not, adjusted his glasses. "Of course it is," Robo said. Then he continued as if he had changed his mind. "No, it's Robert, but they kept calling me Roberto and Bob and sometimes Robbie. It was all too confusing." "Why are you so big?" "I drink my milk, Squirt." "Can you dunk a basketball?" "Probably," Robo said, succumbing to a smile. "Why do you wear a hat?" "Why do you ask so many questions, kid?" Robo pushed the long hair escaping from under his hat, his favorite, the one with the outline of a Bigfoot on the front, behind his ear and took a deep breath as he shook his head from side to side. "You're not mean." "I know. I'm just messing with you. You guys are getting pretty good at basketball." Both of the boys nodded as if to agree that they were getting pretty good. They were 11, and the world was their oyster. "Where's your mom?" "She likes you." "She does? Everybody likes Robo," Robo said, ready to change the subject, even though he was the one who had initiated it. "Are you going to be on TV again?" "We'll see. I'm waiting on the call. Getting ready to go squatching again, though." He almost added an invitation for them to go with him. It would have been a good thing for the boys. Squatching was work, though, at least now, and Robo had to admit that it took some of the pleasure out of the thing he loved most. Okay, I gotta go get some things ready. You tell Misty I said hello, okay? Robo retreated to his trailer with Pixie in tow and considered getting his things together and driving to Teleco. After deciding to wait one more day, he pulled up the team's website to browse through reports. The Teleco sightings were lighting up the forum board. The reports seemed legit. Then he heard it. The low growl. The long howl of Bigfoot. It was Billy's ringtone. Talk to me, boss. Hey, Robo. I'm devising an itinerary. I'm required to have all the plans by tomorrow. I'm almost certain we've received approval for another season. What do you mean, almost certain? He's just playing, boss. I'm trying to finalize the deal for this year's show. Is there anywhere you think we should go? A human interest side? Something promising? We're getting reports from Teleco here in Tennessee. I was planning on journeying over there myself, if I didn't hear from you guys. That's close to you? A couple hours. Less. I don't know. What else? Oh man, it's beautiful. One of the reports, a good one too, was from Bald River Falls. A great backdrop. Two sightings too. One of them was a call to the 911 center, pretty close to the falls, and the other was nearby and just before the call. Billy was quiet and seemed to consider the comment. Okay, I'm going to pitch that as our first destination. Let's hope we get the go-ahead tomorrow. What about Rink and Cable? I haven't called them yet. We'll see. I've got work to do. Robo disconnected and sat down in his recliner. Pixie joined him. She didn't seem to have a preference about where she wanted to be, content to hang out with her main man. From his seat, Robo could see out the back window and across the dry valley into the prickly pines being overtaken by nightfall. He absorbed the quiet, letting it seep inside him to bathe his soul. Robo was certain she would have loved it here. He watched for Bigfoot. All right, are we gonna find Bigfoot, everyone? So now we got our guy with a dog down in Tennessee. We got Billy. We got Ed. And looks like we probably have two more people left to come. Here we go. Let's find out more as we dive right on in to Chapter 4. 2 days after Billy spoke to Robo on the phone, he got the call. The season was a go, as he hoped it would be. The assignments had been sent, and there would be no meeting in LA this year. The cast would go directly to the first location, work for 2 days on how the first show would be shot and how they would investigate. Then everyone involved would begin filming. Signing agent scoured contracts would be all that remained. And amazingly enough, each cast member would receive a raise, proof the show had been a hit. Inking the cast for another season would be a formality. So why did Billy have such a gnawing knot in the pit of his stomach? An intuitive sense of apprehension was telling him to beware. Billy called Robo first, and then Rink. 1 week. Both of them would be ready. He would call Gable Marks last, not because he would be a difficult sell, but because the conversation would be long. One long gripe session. Gable would not be happy that fewer camera operators would accompany the group. He would not be happy with the producer chosen. There would be 100 ways the show could be done better. Gable knew it all. If he had not been a player in the first 2 seasons, Billy would have never wanted him back. The former lawyer's poor attitude seemed to work in his favor, though. The show needed an antagonist, and the audience tests confirmed that Billy was not the only one who had an aversion to Gable. Rink was excited about the news and the extra pay. She was a professional. but she also had to get her Estes Park, Colorado home life in order to go make some money. The usual dealings of finding someone to watch the house, getting the mail stopped, and the bills paid, and the yard mowed were easy to handle. Finding someone to look after her aging mother was another matter altogether. She would have to see Neil. Rink rang the doorbell and then looked over her shoulder across the expanse of yard. She had been to Neil's house only once before and swore she would never return. Once upon a time in another life it could have been hers. That thought gave her some heartburn, but she was never really interested in money anyway. She reconsidered and decided that wasn't the reason she hadn't ever wanted to return. He was an ass, albeit a gorgeous ass with a gorgeous ass, and his self-centered conceit was the reason she never wanted to return. A dog barked somewhere, and she looked out into the fading evening and wondered if the doorbell had worked. Non-working doorbells would fit Neil's M.O. She was peeking to look through the slim glass opening into the living room when the door flew open, causing Rink to stagger backward. Neil's eyes smiled at the scene. "I didn't know if—" The statement hung there. Neil wore shorts. Nothing else. Sweat glistened on his sculpted chest. A lock of curly black hair hung across his forehead. That same crooked smile. Those same perfect teeth. How could a man be a doctor and look like Neil? A familiar butterfly fluttered in her stomach. The dance of 1,000 nights of passion spent blotting out 200 days of battle in the divorce. "I thought you said you'd never come back here." "I didn't think I ever would. Listen, can I come in?" Neil continued to smile and waved his hand like a matador as his home opened up in front of her in dark, manly colors of deep mahogany and steel bathed in Neil's smell and testosterone. At some point Neil had found a towel and he hung it around his neck and leaned on the back of an expensive-looking couch. "So, what brings you here?" Um, Mom." Rink looked up into his eyes and shifted her weight. She always felt like a little girl around Neil. "I'm going to Tennessee." "Continue." "Neil, I have to go to Tennessee. We're starting another season. Mom's alone. I don't want to impose." Rink stopped. She had no idea where she was going with this. Why had she thought she needed to convince Neil to keep an eye on her mother while she was away? Why had she thought he had any obligation to do so? Why was she here? It had all been so much easier before the divorce. Had the arguments been that bad? What had they wanted that they could not achieve together? Rink looked away and thought about running. Just like she had before? She wanted to get out and get away. Why was she frightened this time? And before she could grow angry at herself, she began to cry. She didn't want to. She shouldn't. Still, she cried. "Come here." Neil gathered her into his arms and pulled her head onto his chest. He pushed her hair back away from her face and eyes. "Tell me what's going on. What's wrong with your mother?" "Nothing's wrong with Mother. I have to be away a few months, probably. Maybe. It might not be that long. It might be longer. She doesn't have anyone." Her breath caught in her throat and she snubbed. "And you want me to check on your mother?" "Neil, she loves you. She's always loved you. I think for a while she hated me when we split up." "I love your mom too." Neil pushed her away and looked into her eyes. "You could just call. You wouldn't have to go by there. You could just, have someone check on her. You—" "Shh. I can pay you something." "Rink, you can't pay me anything. I mean, you don't have to pay me. I'll check on your mother. Really? Really? When do you leave? Neil released her and walked across the long room and through the open dining area into the kitchen. Rink could hear a refrigerator open and Neil returned with 2 bottles of water. 2 days. Rink looked around the room once more. It didn't appear as if a woman had been present, but she possessed none of those instincts that alerted most women when competition lurked. Why had she come here? Really? Why had she done it? What was she looking for? She was a biologist, not a behavioral scientist. Right now, she wished she was. What had brought her here? You look good, Rena. Neil. No one called her Rena anymore except Neil. It pinched a nerve somewhere deep inside her chest, and a longing wound around her heart, making it ache. Really, you do. You look good too. The practice is going well? I work entirely too much, but you know that. Rink didn't answer. That was the crux of their breakup. Well, that and the fact that Neil liked sleeping with other women. Lots of them. So, yeah, that had been a reason, but not the big one. I need to take a shower. Stick around. We'll call in Chinese. No, I need to go. I think I need to go. Just let me rinse off. Neil held his hands out as if holding her there in place as he backed away and then around the corner into what must have been a bathroom. Rink heard the water begin to run and then the shower. I saw Susan the other day, Rink said, loud outside the door. She gazed around the room, but nothing caught her attention. Do what? I said I saw Susan the other day. Open the door a crack. Rink opened it a little, and the smell of Old Spice soap swam around her face. Do you see Jeff? I haven't in a year, Neil said. It sounded like water was running over his face. I can't really go out with them since you and I aren't together. They were friends as a couple. It's weird now. You could see Jeff. You guys did everything. Rink looked away from the open door. Somehow, even though they had been so intimate at one time, it didn't seem right now. Could you hand me a razor from the cabinet? Neil, I think it's just a razor. He peeked around the curtain. There was fluffy shampoo in his hair, standing as it waved, frozen comically in place. He was smiling. I could get out and get it myself. Rink walked into the room and over to the bureau, but the image in her mind began to grow. She could remember that sight. The indentations of his muscles at the top of his hips undulating, a small pathway down into the curly hair. Here. She handed the razor toward the shower, averting her eyes. Why was it so hot in here? You don't have to look away. You've seen everything I have to offer. Yes, I do have to look away. We're not married now. We weren't married when we went to San Francisco. Remember the Muir Woods? Rink looked up, and all she could see was Neil's face peering around the curtain again. Grinning big now. She smiled back. She could remember the Muir Woods. I can't do this, Neil. Can't do what? You know. She tried to sound sincere and failed. I have enough problems as it is without getting something else going on. You can walk away. You can fly to Tennessee. He began opening the shower curtain. Really? Who would want to go anywhere in Tennessee? Neil. What in God's name is in Tennessee? I don't know. Maybe a Bigfoot. His smile had vanished. The look on his face told Rink that her former husband realized that this scene would not go as he had planned. When he didn't get his way, the game was over. I'll look in on your mother. You don't have to worry." The water continued to run. "Okay, okay then," Rink said. She looked around the room self-consciously. "Thank you." "No problem," he said, shutting the curtain. When Neil opened the curtain, Rink was gone. She had a date with Bigfoot in Tennessee. All right, so now we have met three of our main characters, I would imagine. We've met Billy, we've met Robo, and we've met Rink. What a weird assemblage of names. And then there's going to be somebody with the name Max with an extra X. You get what you get, right? What do you guys think so far? Are you enjoying the story? Any thoughts, questions, comments? Anything you want to know? Let's see. Any questions? Any questions? Are there questions? Don't see any questions. No questions. Questions from you. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop, boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop, boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop. All right, with no questions, we'll dive right back in and start ourselves into Chapter 5. Billy's flight landed at the relatively desolate McGee-Tyson Airport in Maryville on one of those magnificent Tennessee spring afternoons when eternity is visible from the top of each knoll and life explodes from the tips of each tree limb and flower pedestal. After collecting his supply bags, which were considerable, he retrieved his white rental SUV and followed the GPS directions to Sweetwater Hotel and Convention Center, the team's home base for the investigation. The large and aging but well-kept and proud structure sat atop a hill overlooking I-75 on the outskirts of Monroe County, less than 50 miles below the toes of the Smoky Mountain foothills. After eating at the hotel restaurant and working on his laptop in the lobby for an hour waiting for his room, and just before Billy grew bored, Robo, laden with bags and gear and wearing his favorite green gone squatchin' hat, walked through the front doors, slinging them open with his prow in the outstretched motion of an emerging superstar professional wrestler. Upon seeing Billy, Robo's smile blossomed into an enormous grin, displaying one missing canine tooth. "What's up, man?" Robo asked, before shaking Billy's hand in 2 quick movements. "This place is the epitome of the South," Billy said, glancing once around the room. "The owner of the restaurant, Flo, is straight out of Central Casting. She said, 'The pie's $1.' I swear she said it just like that. 2 syllables for the word pie. Amazing." "What'd you expect?" "That's what I expected. Then a British family comes through." "Oh, no," Robo said, waiting for the story. There was always a story. "Their small blond son raced away from his parents into that snack room right over there. The mom and dad got distracted and didn't notice at first, until the little boy ran back out of the room carrying a bag of Cheetos high over his head as if he was brandishing the Olympic torch. He had this tremendous grin on his face. The mom snatched the bag out of his hands and says in her British accent, 'We'll be off to dinner soon.' I have never seen a child make a face like he made, incredulous and aghast at his sudden and complete reversal of fortune following his discovery. He began to make this sound of panic and horror, uttered only by someone who has been unjustly robbed of all that is good in the world. 'No,' in this little British accent." Robo began to chuckle. The boy's father looked on in mute empathy as if to say, "I know how it feels, little man." "You made that up." "I swear to you it's the God's truth." "Where is everybody?" Robo asked. He was accustomed to Billy's theatrics. On camera, his spiel sounded as though it had been invented, but it was all Billy. Rink is driving in from the airport. She waited on Gable. They should be here any time now. I told her we'd meet in the restaurant for dinner." Robo nodded and then let his gaze inspect the lobby. The curious desk help eyed them with amusement. "Come on," Billy said, beginning to gather his belongings and then stacking the largest of the items onto the rolling luggage cart. "Let's roll this stuff up to my room. It should be ready by now." They walked out the double-wide glass doors into the front lot, took a left, and began the long trek around the hotel. Robo did indeed resemble a Bigfoot when he walked, albeit an older one that stooped over somewhat. "So my sister brought this dude home with her for Easter," Robo began. "I'm pretty sure he might be a carny. He's got real bad teeth. Lots worse than mine. You know, I'm just missing this one." Robo pushed his finger into a gap in his upper gum before continuing. "He knows more about Ferris wheels than anyone I've ever been around." Had Billy possessed a different disposition, the conversation might have been radically different. Why would your sister date someone who worked in a carnival? Does your sister look like you? How did your conversation include Ferris wheels? Instead, Billy offered no prompts and listened. "So, he moved the biggest wheel from Kansas to Texas. He fell asleep in Colorado, and he says he woke up and was tied to a hang glider. He saw eagles flying around, and the oldest and fittest flew the highest. Well, the ones on the bottom were about to die." "You've got an interesting family, Robo." "The guy fits in with my sister. She's trouble. Always has been. Used to get me and my brothers in trouble every day. She gets on her phone, looking at Facebook probably, and she says to the carny dude, 'Keith wants to know if anyone's missing a goat.' I swear you can't make this stuff up." Upon arriving at the room, Billy tried using the credit card key, but it didn't work. "Don't you hate that?" "Sometimes you just gotta hold your mouth right," Billy said as he continued trying to open the door. "Anyway, my sister got arrested when they left my house." Billy froze and looked to Robo. "You've got to be kidding." "No, I'm not. She couldn't get her card to work either, at the gas station. She got into it with the clerk. The police came. She got into it with them, and they ended up taking her to jail. She had to stay in jail. The carney took the kids back to her trailer. Well, she spent a night in jail. They couldn't come up with a bail right off. She didn't even call me." Billy shook his head in disbelief, and the door opened. Apparently, he had held his mouth right. After loitering in the room for a while discussing Bald River Falls, Billy and Robo walked down to the restaurant and began perusing the menu. The waitress had just brought them a glass of sweet tea when they spotted Rink and Gable walking in their direction. "Ah, the South," Gable began as he reached them. "This ought to be interesting." "It's a new experience, but not an altogether unpleasurable one," Billy said. "This place was a Ramada Inn when the World's Fair came to Knoxville in '82. "I do remember the fair," Gable said, rolling his eyes as he seemed to look back into the past. "I was in law school at the time. No one could believe the World's Fair was coming to Tennessee. I still can't believe it." Gable always tried to interject his law background into the conversation, as if it gave him higher standing. The team doubted his past, but had always remained content to allow the comments to remain unchallenged. "So, the crew is already unloaded," Billy told them. "If you want to call them a crew, we've got a new producer and two camera folks that look like they're right out of school." "Why did they cut the crew size?" Rink asked. "Edward's looking at a hard budget," Billy said. "I thought we had done really well. I have no real way of knowing, though. He hasn't been forthcoming with the numbers." A waitress had arrived and stood with her hand on her hip, waiting on orders. "We've got more equipment, though. More to carry around." If we get something big on at least one of these investigations, he'll change his tune, Gable said. Billy directed his attention to the irritated waitress. Buffet for me, he said, smiling. The rest of the cast agreed. We need to do something big. Bigfoot needs to cooperate, though. And that's when they saw him walking in their direction. Round, muscled shoulders, probably more for show than strength, slim with a golden tan, perfect jet black hair that did not appear to be dyed, and wearing a red pullover and jeans. The man strode to their table. "Hi, I'm the new guy," he said. "Harrison Getty." He extended his hand to Billy, who sat unmoving with a bemused expression on his face, as if it had recently frozen. Excuse me?" Billy asked him, still not offering his hand in return. "Harrison Getty, the new guy. I'm the new member of the team." The Bigfoot Found cast looked to each other in silence. Even Gable was speechless. "Who sent you?" Billy asked, as if he couldn't quite believe his ears. And that was the truth. "Edward," the new guy said, his hand slowly dropping to his side. "You guys didn't know." "No, haven't heard anything," Billy said as he began to stand. "I'm Billy. I guess we'll talk with Edward. We just didn't know anything." He finally shook Harrison's hand. "So, it was Billy?" Yes, Billy Mason. You know the others?" "No, I've never seen the show." Billy glanced to the others. Harrison had never seen the show. Gable looked away, disgusted, and shook his head. "Well, this is Rink," Billy said, beginning the introductions. "This is Robo, and this is Gable." Billy might not have been happy about the intrusive addition, but to this point he wasn't letting it show. None of the others moved to shake the new guy's hand, so he stood smiling where he was and held up his hand as if to wave. "Nice to meet you all. I'm glad to be a member of the team. I'm hearing these reality programs are all the rage these days. Sort of unscripted. Meet the locals," he exclaimed, complete with air quotes. As expected, Gable was ready to explode. "This is not a reality show," he began, and for once it seemed that Billy was pleased Gable would be able to be Gable in all his obnoxious glory. "This is an investigative unit charged with uncovering evidence and finding a Bigfoot. We're not a sideshow. We don't denigrate the locals. We are a serious scientific team." Harrison stood frozen, still wearing a comical grin and possibly calculating the possibility that Gable was joking. "We've searched for Bigfoot most of our adult lives. 3 of us have actually had a sighting. Have you ever seen a Bigfoot, sir?" "No, I haven't," Harrison said, looking around the table to each member. "I really haven't looked for one. So, you guys seriously think Bigfoot is real?" The team still hadn't taken their eyes off Harrison, and Robo, who had not spoken yet, finally spoke. "Yeah, all but Rink, and she's got an open mind. He's real, bruh," Big Robo said. "So what's your role? What are you supposed to do?" "Well, Edward said," Harrison began, then seemed to have a change of heart. "Can I sit?" No one moved at first, and finally Billy scooted his chair a bit and allowed Harrison to drag a seat beside him. "So, as I was saying, Edward told me I'd be part of the team, and Billy would put me to work." "Like a plant?" Gable asked. "Like for fake witness interview?" "No, I'm a member of the team. I guess I'm the outsider you're trying to convince. Maybe I make some jokes about the situations or about Bigfoot and stuff." No, you don't make jokes about the Bigfoot, Gable said. He pushed his long hair behind his ear. We don't need opposition, and that's not what this is about. Okay, listen. I didn't mean to make you mad, Harrison said. I just got hired to be on the program. I'm not angry. You need to know what we're about, since you've never even bothered to watch an episode of our show and see how we operate. Maybe we can have a meal and settle down. This is all just sort of unexpected and sudden, Billy said. Everyone's hungry. Maybe our first order of business will be letting you watch some of the episodes. I'll talk to Edward and see what he expects. Oh, I've eaten already, Harrison said, leaving the group to gaze and wonder at him once more. I just came down to meet you guys. When more silence followed, Harrison rose to leave. So, I guess tomorrow? He asked in a vague way to the entire table. Sure, Billy said. Sure, 4 a.m. in the lobby. Billy rearranged his silverware. Okay then, 4 it is. I'll see you guys. Harrison strode away. 4? Rink said. Why so early on the first day? 4? Did I say 4? Billy had begun to smile. I meant 8. My bad. Boss, I can catch him, Robo said, and began to stand. Nah, that's okay, Billy said, extending his hand to stop Robo. It'll be okay. Everyone laughed. Let's see if he waits, Billy finished. The buffet was remarkable. All right, well, now we have a 5th. We have Harrison, we have Billy, we have Robo, we have Gable, and we have Rink. But there's only 4 people on the cover and a Bigfoot. No! As a reminder, everyone, if you are interested in the book and want to find out more about the author, Tim D. Smith, I have the QR codes on the screen there. Scan away, it'll take you right to his website. QR codes, Waves of the Future. You gotta love it. And of course, all the episodes from tonight will be available, or all the chapters from tonight will be available on the YouTube channel a little bit later this evening after the show. youtube.com/@SirArminius. If you haven't subscribed there yet, would you please? It's free, and it helps me out. All right, let's go ahead and continue with Chapter 6. Billy was the first to make it into the lobby at 7 a.m., cutting through to the restaurant once more. Harrison had leaned back on a couch and was dozing. Technically, he had waited. Harrison! Harrison! Billy said as he shook the actor's shoulder. What? Where am I? Harrison asked as his eyes shot around the lobby. Despite needing a shave, he looked as though he had stepped directly from the pages of GQ. We've looked everywhere for you. I was right here. It's been hours. You said the lobby. You're delirious, Billy said, trying to suppress a smile and wondering how he could continue the charade. At that moment, Robo strode into the lobby. Robes, I found him. He had fallen asleep on the couch. Oh, man, producers don't like to wait, Robo said. Wait? Yeah, I think he was on the phone. Probably Edward. Harrison looked to the ground as if he might find some answers written in the tiles, and as he did, he massaged the back of his neck. As if the answer had arrived, he bolted to his feet suddenly. I've got to go talk to them, he said before darting from the lobby. You know, Rink was right. He is purty. She said that? Yeah, but not like you're thinking. Kinda mean-like. Good. Hey, let's go eat. When they finally got on the road at 8 a.m. sharp, Harrison was still not ready to forgive anyone. In fact, he was pretty wiped out. The time difference and his early wake-up call was taking its toll. The rented SUVs rolled down Highway 68 toward Tellico with the rental van containing all their gear close behind. The Bigfoot Found team was on its way. Production decided Billy, Robo, and their newest dependent, Harrison, would find and interview Mrs. Bennett, the witness who had called 911 after seeing a Bigfoot looking in her window. The team would then travel out of town, away from Tellico, to Star Mountain to speak with another witness and survey that location. Star Mountain had long been a source for sightings of not only Bigfoot, but other unknown creatures. But the sightings and witnesses, however, had much less credibility than the Tellico encounters. Meanwhile, Gable and Rink would first go to the dispatcher's office in Monroe County to speak with the sheriff and get any police reports that might be applicable before following up on any promising leads. Gable enjoyed working with law enforcement and felt eminently qualified given his law background. But the pairing of he and Rink had become a necessity because Billy's relationship with Gable was deteriorating daily. To their credit, neither demonstrated hostilities on camera, but their growing animosity was evident. The film production crew would begin scouting locations and filming scene shots. High on the list was Bald River Falls in the Tellico River. Hopefully they'd capture enough footage during this beautiful day alone to use for editing the entire episode. Of course, they'd find things along the way, but having backup footage eased their angst should weather ruin their chances at panoramic footage. Mrs. Bennett's home sat at the edge of the Cherokee National Forest, high on a hillside but shrouded by tall elms and pines, all but invisible from the narrow two-lane road, which curved and wound beside the Tellico Beach Deli before bottoming out into the federally owned land and her pasture. The home was more than 50 years old, surrounded by a sad, sagging porch with lonely, crooked chairs, and where she had lived for the past 10 years since her husband had passed. God rest his soul. An old gray Caprice peeked from under a car cover in the tilted gravel drive, unmoved in years because her daughter Angela came at least twice a week to run her to the grocery store and check the heat or air, depending on the weather and time of year, though spring could be tricky since you never knew when you might get a cold spell. "Someone actually lives here?" Harrison asked. "Yes, someone lives here. She's old, and she's willing to tell us about her encounter with a Bigfoot. We found her. She didn't reach out to us." Billy's tone implied his aggravation at the comment, and Harrison was smart enough to remain quiet. If Robo had heard the comment, he said nothing and instead walked into the small yard that spanned out into a pasture below the mountainside. When Mrs. Bennet came out to meet them, she was adjusting her sweatshirt as she moved in slow motion, her face full of doubting apprehension and yet curiosity. In no more than 30 seconds, Billy had broken the ice, and the old lady spoke as if she had known them since they were young'uns. "So, you called 911?" Billy asked. They had pulled their chairs close together, and Robo leaned forward as if the conversation meant more to him than anything in the world. At that moment, it probably did to Robo. "Yeah, I called. I saw him in the pasture. Savannah has started to bark, and I looked out. She's bad about chasing possums and skunks. That's when I called." Savannah did love to bark at things on the porch, and she did love to chase animals, though it was a certainty she wouldn't have known what to do if she ever caught something. Once upon a time she had alerted Mrs. Bennet of an intruding possum, which Mrs. Bennet ended up covering with a clothes basket, and which she and her neighbor Joan, when they had been on speaking terms, failed at finding a removal solution. A sheriff's deputy had finally grabbed it by the tail and taken it away. "Savannah's your dog?" Billy prodded. "Yeah, my little poodle. She's inside, she don't like the heat. When I was on the phone, I heard him on the porch. I'm surprised he didn't fall through. It creaks. I heard him walking." Billy and Robo looked to each other and said nothing. He stooped over and looked in that window right there." She pointed to one of the dusty panes. "You got a good look? Tell me what he looked like exactly." "He had light brown hair around his face, big brown eyes, kind of like a hound dog, but big, real big. Big ridges above his eyes. His nose was kind of flat." "Hair on his neck and face?" Billy asked. Yeah, but not like a beard or anything, but hairy all round," Mrs. Bennet said as she made a sour face. She looked away and seemed to shiver. "He was watching me. Lordy, I'm still shook up." "Uh, you don't need to be worried about a thing with us here," Robo said, smiling, the gap all the more appealing with a dimple on each cheek. "I used to be a bouncer." Mrs. Bennet batted her eyelids, smitten. Perhaps she imagined Robo menacing Joan's floozy daughter. "Have you heard of anyone else seen a Bigfoot around here?" Billy asked. No, I don't talk to much of anyone but my daughter." "You haven't told anyone but the officers who came up here?" "No, I don't talk to much of anyone nowadays. Miss Joan is the biggest gossip there ever was. I quit talking to her a few months back. I saw her and that floozy daughter of hers at the store the other day. They were standing there blocking the ham, and I just went the other way." Then another thought occurred to Mrs. Bennet. "You know, them sheriff's boys said they'd heard of this thing looking in windows. When I told them the story, they kept looking to each other. I thought they were making fun, but now I'm not so sure." Billy and Robo made plans, with the consent of Mrs. Bennet and her daughter, who was summoned on the cell phone during a very important hair session, to return with a film crew. If Mrs. Bennet could manage credibility on film, the segment would be gold. As they drove away from the house and back toward Tellico, Harrison broke his silence. "You guys really believe her?" "She believes she saw something. I believe she did too," Billy said. He seemed to be thinking as he drove. "Yeah, I think she saw a Bigfoot. They're curious creatures. Shy, but curious. We've had several reports of them looking into windows." Billy glanced in the rear-view mirror in time to see Harrison laughing and shaking his head. "You don't believe her?" Billy asked. "What would lead you to believe she's disingenuous?" "She's old," Harrison said. "Old people are untruthful?" "Well, no. I suppose she could be telling a story she thought was true. She might not be, you know, with it." Robo spoke up without looking away from the scenery entering town. "You can see the pasture from her window. She was washing dishes. Still early in the day, and we know less than 2 hours later there was a sighting at the falls. A Bigfoot could have covered that distance easily in that time period." Robo thought for a moment. "Or it's another one." "So they're having some sort of convention? Get together at Tellico in the mountains of Tennessee?" "I don't buy it," Harrison said. "I thought I'd keep those thoughts to myself," Billy said into the mirror facing the back seat. "There could be a sound biological reason they moved down from the hills. We'll look at weather, time of year. You never know." He thought for a bit as he navigated the SUV around the curves in the small town. Her credibility might not fly for everyone, especially her daughter. I do think she saw a Bigfoot. But, Robo, she was wearing a sweatshirt." "I saw that too," Robo replied. "I still think she saw one." Harrison shook his head in the back but said nothing. They located Mecca Pike, leading out of Tellico, and ventured toward what appeared to be another small mountain range that, compared to some of their other locales, looked to be no more than prominent hills, but it was obviously desolate. The GPS continued to lose their road, making it appear to the computer that the SUV was careening down a hillside or driving through a field. The road often doubled back on itself to climb higher, and drop-offs appeared into dense wooded areas. "If I was a Bigfoot, I'd love to live here," Robo said. "It's squatchy for sure," Billy added, all grins and leaning forward as if it might help him navigate. After inching around the dirt roads for 45 minutes, and according to their GPS, they arrived at a driveway blocked by a thick logging chain and adorned with signs that read, "No trespassing," and "Private property." The investigators looked to each other. "Boss, I don't think this is it." "They said they'd meet us at the gate," Billy said. "Let's stay in the car, though." "It might be my intuition," Harrison said, "but I get a bad feeling about this." "What gave it away?" Billy asked. Harrison sat alone with his foul expression in the back. "I'm listening for banjos," Robo said with a grin. Rolling down his window, and even over the soft hum of the vehicle, the men could hear cicadas and crickets, the cacophony of wild nature. A dog barked somewhere nearby. No banjos. Moments later, however, several people did appear around the bend in the drive. A man in jeans and a red Budweiser t-shirt led the pack. 5-day-old beard and hair askew, he held his head high and strode with deliberate steps down the shaded path. The remainder of the group was children, more than likely this Pied Piper's own. And at the top of the pecking order was a girl with blonde hair and stereotypical overalls. She might have been 11, and a quick count revealed 8 more stair-stepped youngsters all the way down to the last straggler tiptoeing on unsteady bare feet. Billy thought to himself that another small child unable to walk as of yet might be in someone's arms somewhere. A panting dog with long black fur and hanging head followed the clan. "You uns a Bigfoot, guys?" "What gave it away?" Billy asked with a grin as he exited. Robo followed, and then reluctantly, Harrison. "You folks are pretty far out here," Billy said. He extended his hand, close enough now to smell Old Sweat and possibly Jack Daniels. "I'm Billy." "I'm Tana," the man replied, reaching over the chain to shake with a hand that Billy found surprisingly smooth. "These are my kids." He didn't offer to introduce the children, and they stood further behind in suspicion. "This is Robo, and that's Harrison," Billy said. Robo stepped forward, offering his hand, while Harrison waved from behind them. You ever see the show?" "No, can't say I is." "Well, we go all over the country investigating Bigfoot sightings and interviewing people. We're doing preliminary work. We heard you might have some stories." "I got some," the man said, but didn't move or offer anything further. After a moment, Billy continued. "Can you tell us some? Should we go to the, Billy stopped, not knowing whether to say house or trailer, and continued with safety in mind. "Can you give us the gist?" "Gist?" I mean, can you tell us about some of them?" "We hear screams," the man said. Silence. "Like howls?" "No. Some of 'em scream like a woman screamin'. Grunts. They was this thing I saw in the woods one evening that had a weird like head and body like a big giant cat with a big long tail. It looked at me and smiled." The investigators looked to each other. Harrison literally raised his eyebrows. "Have you ever seen a Bigfoot?" Billy asked. "They come around some in the evenings, hunting wild. Bunch of 'em together." "Have you felt threatened or anything? Do you have weapons?" The comment elicited laughter from Tanner, who had surprisingly white and even teeth, and he glanced over his shoulder to the children, who smiled and began to move around, which could have been their answers to reciprocal giggles. Shit, you kidding? Course I got weapons. Of course he did. Billy looked away and took 2 steps back toward the SUV. I'll get one of 'em in my sights. We going on a dinner plate. Oh my, Billy said. So, you ain't ever killed a strange creature around here, have you? No, no, not yet. Listen, you boys pay for these interviews? Tanner asked. No, we're just investigators, Billy said. Do you have any evidence of your sightings? Pictures? Fur you might have found? Ain't got none of that, the man replied. Susie found a tooth once. He looked to a little girl in a dirty sundress near the back of the pack, but she said nothing and simply gazed in a stupor at the men. Might have been one of the young'uns, though. Tanner, we have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. You've been very helpful, Billy lied, and offered his hand once more. We're gonna finish today's work. We'll be in touch. Fine, the man said. You just give me a call. We might do that interview for free anyways. Sure thing, Billy said in a full walk back to the vehicle. Take care. In less than a minute, Billy was thankful the SUV started at the first crank, and they eased back onto the safety of the road in the direction of Tellico. Ah, you gotta love them mountain folk, huh? Them French fried potatoes, mm-hmm. Ah, you gotta love 'em. What do you guys think? Do you like the weird people and the whatever they is, them French fried potatoes are, well. All right, guys, I think we got one more chapter in us left tonight. So let's jump right to it. Remember, if you do have any kind of questions, feel free to post them in whatever channel you happen to be watching, and I will be happy to answer them after the chapter. Here we go. Chapter 7. Billy said as he, Robo, and Harrison turned onto Highway 68 toward home base. Why don't we just have the town hall at the motel where we're staying? They've got a big meeting room. Sounds good to me, Robo said. Harrison sat mute, looking out the back window of the vehicle. Billy, watching him in the rearview mirror, wondered if his silence was due to jet lag, or indifference, or anger, and for a moment suppressed a tiny bit of guilt for the hazing, which passed as quickly as it had arrived. Stop! Robo screamed and almost opened his door at 55 miles an hour. Billy did as he was told and pulled to the shoulder of the road, and before the vehicle was fully stopped, Robo was out the door, jogging in the direction they had come, and then off the side of the road, through the grass and into the brush. Billy sat almost stunned as did Harrison, whose mouth hung open. Maybe he had a potty, Billy said simply until curiosity overtook him, causing him to exit and follow. Robo, where you going, big man? He yelled. I saw one, Robo replied, not even bothering to turn around as he continued to walk in the direction of trees. Saw one? I swear I saw Bigfoot. Billy ran toward Robo and then contemplated going back to the SUV to get a camera and decided he was already too far away. He had to see for himself, and if he didn't go now, he might miss it. Robo was always hopeful, but he was also deadly serious. By the time Billy caught up, Robo had emerged on the other side of the trees and stood looking across what appeared to be a pasture. I know I saw him standing here, Robo said. The big man looked to the ground for a moment before apparently deciding tracks weren't to be had before gazing over the hillside once more. That house. Oh, what about it? Robo asked. Think they seen him? One way to find out, Billy said, and the pair began walking in that direction. Harrison had exited as well and was following far behind as if irritated. The farmhouse, complete with a wraparound porch and empty white chairs, sat facing the hills of Tellico and a small dirt road. When the researchers finally arrived, they were greeted by a wagging dog that might have been part German Shepherd, carrying something in its mouth, smiling at them. An older man with skin the color of a marin's egg, sporting a crew cut and wearing overalls, appeared at the door even before they locked. Hello, Billy said. I know this is going to sound crazy, but my big friend here thought he saw something standing at the tree line by Highway 68, so we got out to investigate. We're researchers. I hope we're not trespassing. No, it'll be fine. Have you, seen anything around? Billy asked. The man didn't speak, but suppressed a smile. You know, like a big upright creature? Billy continued. Like him? The man said, motioning to Robo. Sort of like him, yes. Bigger than him? Billy said nothing, turning to Robo, who stood trying not to smile, but showing the gap of his missing tooth anyway. He's out there here, the man said before looking over their shoulders and around the yard. Lots of times at sunset. You do know what we're talking about, then? I know. Could you describe him? Taller and heavier than your friend, the man said as he motioned for the dog to come to his side. Covered in brown fur, not light brown or black like a bear, but deep mahogany, matted and tangled. His face is flat, long arms. Billy's face looked as though he was 8 and had just opened his favorite Christmas present. He leaned forward, and for a moment it appeared he might hug the man. You got a good look, then. Every time. Every time? More than once? Billy asked. Yes, more than once. The man was smiling now. Boss, I know a good place for a night investigation, Robo said, smiles all around. Can I ask your name? Tom Woods, the man said before adding, but he might not show. I'm not clear, Billy said. I thought you said he stood there often. He knows things. The man stood there as the statement slammed the conversation into silence. Finally, Billy pressed on with his questioning. He knows things? Billy asked. What if the conversation turned out to be like the one he had experienced earlier? Maybe these people were all crazy. My mother was a Cherokee Indian, the man said. People call them Native Americans now, I know, but she was a Cherokee. She knew quite a bit about life in the hills. Go on. She said they read your mind. They can make you forget, too. Billy didn't really know where to go from there, so he waited and was rewarded with more. He knows I mean no harm. He doesn't feel threatened. He allows me to see him. Did she pass along any other bits of folklore? Billy asked. It's not folklore, really. It's the truth. They're much smarter than anyone gives them credit. If you listen, they communicate with you. But most times they simply make you forget. Billy looked over to Robo, whose mouth hung agape now. It was then he noticed Harrison now stood among them. It was impossible to ascertain what the city slicker thought about the conversation. I'd like to communicate with a Bigfoot, Robo said. I'd tell him I think he's awesome. I think you would, Tom said. I'm sorry. My name's Billy, and this is Robo and Harrison. Billy extended his hand, which Tom shook. Could we come out here one evening and see if we can spot him? You're more than welcome. I wouldn't suspect you'd see him, though. No offense, but I think he'd recognize your motives. There was more to Tom than met the eye. Speaking slowly didn't always indicate slowness of the mind. In fact, sometimes it meant the opposite. You think he'd see the cameras? Billy said. They're shy creatures, Robo added. He'd know an hour before you arrived, Tom said, smiling. You're welcome to try, though. Could we interview you on camera? No one wants to see me on TV. Billy knew in his heart that wasn't true. This was possibly the most credible witness he had ever met. We'll be in touch before we just show up, Billy said. You have a lovely place. Thank you, boys. Be careful. Look around if you like. Tom turned and proceeded slowly inside, leaving behind the dog to supervise the Bigfoot team and escort them away before stopping at the end of the yard to watch them leave. I'd love to get Tom on camera, Billy said, saying exactly what he told us. You think he's right? About the communication and all? Robo asked. It sure would explain some things. Billy seemed to be lost in thought as they walked. It might be like a dog. I read they pick up on facial expressions and body language. Dogs study us continually. It's almost as if they read our minds, when in reality, your body movements and actions are speaking to the dogs without a word being said. Robo nodded in agreement, then added, But what Tom said, they don't just communicate. It's almost like a sort of mind control in certain cases. Billy nodded and considered the comment. He looked to Harrison. Sort of like Harrison there, Billy said. The comment caused the actor to raise his eyes. His body language is speaking volumes. I'm just tired. Billy didn't really believe him. Robo was still considering the comments. So, he let us see him. If Tom's right. Maybe so, Billy replied. They noticed the blue lights before they made it through the trees. At first, Billy thought someone might have hit their big vehicle on the side of the road. He couldn't recall how well he had parked. Then his heart skipped a beat when he thought about the equipment inside. What if someone had broken into the vehicle? The officers noticed them before the researchers made it to the vehicle also, and turned to watch them trek up the embankment. Sorry, officers. We thought we saw something in the trees and went to investigate. I hope we were sufficiently out of the road, Billy said, smiling. It is, the first officer said. He stood up straight and smiled as well. Straight teeth, dark hair, crew cut, sinewy muscles in his forearms, slim waist. If he had been on a motorcycle, he would have resembled an officer from the old television show Chips. Was it Bigfoot? You've seen our show. Maybe. Robo had to investigate. Find him? Not yet, Billy said. A big fan, the other officer said. Are you guys filming here? We are, Billy said. Have you heard any stories? Billy knew law enforcement had been contacted. Possibly these officers had interviewed Mrs. Bennett. The officers looked at each other, and the first raised his eyebrows before it seemed a silent consent was reached. We have, the officer said. We saw him. What? Billy blurted. Saw him? I thought you might say you spoke with someone who had seen him. Well, we have, but we saw him. I saw him near a cemetery, and Chad came out and he was still there. What was he doing? I mean, the Bigfoot. I couldn't tell. There's a big field behind the cemetery. He was looking across it. I check out the cemetery most nights. Kids go in there. It was dusk. He was just standing there across the field by the trees, looking around, real still. I don't know how I noticed him. Would you guys go on camera and tell the story? The officers looked to each other and decided it might be fun. Then they gave their contact information to Harrison, who Billy had finally found useful. The team was anxious to return to base. The day had been productive. Rink would be excited but skeptical, as usual. they might even be able to one-up Gable. It wasn't likely, but maybe. Well, hello, Kilometer Smith, True Crossup, Mr. Israel. Glad to have you guys here with us this evening, as well as everybody else who is out there, as we have been reading through Bigfoot Found by Tim D. Smith. So let's see, we love Tim D. Smith books. Yes, I do too. He's the best. Great book. I found a Bigfoot. Sorry, just giving you guys voices. Um, We have reached the ending of our reading for tonight. However, if you did miss any of it, all of the chapters will be up on the YouTube channel for your rewatching and re-listening pleasure. youtube.com/@SirArmenius. If you have not already, make sure you get out there and subscribe to the channel. It helps me to continue to offer these free readings for indie authors and help to promote books that you guys may not have ever heard of and may not have ever gotten the chance to listen to. Thank you to all of you. The greatest gift that you can give me is the gift of your time and that little sub on YouTube. And I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of your time this evening. If you guys do want to find out more about Tim Smith, Tim D. Smith, the QR codes that you see on your screen, scan that with your camera and it will take you to his website. You can check him out, see what you think. Got quite a few books out there. This is just one of them that we are showcasing for your listening pleasure. I will be back again on Tuesday, where we will continue to read Bigfoot Found. You can find more out about what it's all about by checking it out on Tuesday. Once again, if you missed any of the reading tonight, the chapters 1 through 7, I will get posted up on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArmenius, a little bit later this evening. It really just depends on how long it takes YouTube to upload them. And then once again, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, I will be back for the next installment. Once again, if you can't make it, the chapters will be up later that evening on the YouTube channel. Thank you all so much for coming along to join me this evening. I hope you have enjoyed our live reading tonight, and I hope to see you guys all again really soon. Have a great night and a wonderful rest of your weekend. Good night, everybody.